Happy Monday, everybody. TGIM, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Today's show is brought to you by the law offices of Arman Grigorian. If you're involved in a car accident and you have been injured, reach out to Arman directly on his cell phone. I've mentioned this on the show multiple times in the beginning, 818-404-0333. Again, if you've been injured in a car accident, reach out to Arman Grigorian's law offices. He will take care of you from A to Z. He will guide you in the right directions. If you have a case, he'll handle it. If you don't have a case, he will guide you in the proper and ethical way to handle whatever you need to handle. Also, today's show is also brought to you by The Cabinet Spot. For all your custom cabinetry, whether it's in your kitchen, in your man cave, or if you need closet space, custom closets, reach out to The Cabinet Spot. Number is 81888
495-0210.
There you go. Armand could see the number better than I can.
Once again, 888-495-0210.
Reach out to Vic. Tell him the WiseNuts sent you, and he'll take care of everything. If you need that ladies, if you're remodeling the house and you need that walk-in closet, Vic will take care of it. A to Z. Also,
and he doesn't disclose everything to your husband. Don't worry. He's a very private guy. So
yes.
The cost and everything is everything private.
Also, we want to thank the boys at the Glen Arden, main sponsor as well. If you're interested in a cigar lounge, if you're interested in networking with the right people, reach out to us. We'll connect you to the boys at the Glen Arden, and you can come in and enjoy this amazing cigar lounge, network with the right people, make some great connections, and hopefully your business will thrive as well.
Yeah, let us know anytime. Listen, you're in the area, you're in the mood for a cigar, message one of us. One of us is always here, so come by. You'll have a smoke with us, and I think that's a lot of the people that have come with us. They end up signing up because they see the environment here, how cozy, and the type of people that are here. They end up signing up.
Yes, very warm, very inviting. The guys did a phenomenal job. Yeah. So, if you guys are interested, reach out to us, and we will connect you to management, and they'll take care of everything else. That being said, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, ladies and gentlemen. We have another therapist on the show today.
Yeah, for those of you that were messaging another therapist, yes, because you all bastards need therapy, all of you.
So
and the ones that are not willing to admit it, you're probably narcissists. I just diagnosed half of you.
There you go. Well, you just triggered half of them. That should be a clip. It'll probably go viral. Like your Cartier bracelets, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Natalie Jambazian is here with us. We want to thank you for taking time out of your Monday to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
So you're a licensed marriage and family therapist. A licensed marriage and family therapist.
Active
Emphasis.
license.
Active. Yes. Renewals, everything
yes,
is up to
all up to par.
All right. We want to just make sure because, when you sit down with somebody, you want to make sure that they're licensed, they know what they're talking about, and, the whole 9 yards.
Credible.
How long had you been? Did you have that in your holster there?
Probably about a couple months now.
Couple months?
couple months.
I remember the day it showed up in your holster.
Yeah. It's been like just loaded and ready to just...
Ready.
I mean, best guess to have to disclose all that stuff because you want to make sure when you're seeking a therapist, they're licensed. But anyways, we tend to digress. So you specialize in narcissism.
Yes.
So very quickly, before we dive into diagnosing certain people and patients and all that, why did you get into that line as far as therapy?
Well, correction, I work with, survivors of narcissistic relationships. So I don't work with the narcissist itself. And the reason why I got into this field or specialty is because I've been in narcissistic relationships myself. And I just feel like there's a lot of therapists who don't really specialize in this type of, work, and because they don't really get it. And I just feel like not a lot of people understand it. And there's just few and far in between where there's not a lot of therapists who do this work. So I feel like it was a calling for me after being in a narcissistic relationship myself. And I really just wanted to help others feel like they're not alone.
Did you decide to become a therapist due to one of those relationships, or you became a therapist for other reasons and then you kind of found your niche because of the relationships you were in?
Yeah, I feel like, so I used to work in the entertainment industry. I was a personal assistant, and I was just not happy in the work that I was doing. So I decided to go back to school, and I got my bachelor's, I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. I collected my hours. I was working with children. I loved working with children. I still work with kids. And after, like during the time that I was collecting my hours, I was a trainee, and I was caught in a narcissistic relationship, and I didn't know until I saw my own therapist. And my therapist is like, sounds to me that the person has narcissistic tendencies. And I was like, what? I was shocked because the irony, I'm a therapist, right? I should know this. But narcissism was not talked about in graduate school. It was just a footnote in a book. Like, it wasn't talked about at all. Now you hear it a lot more, right? It's a little bit overused and misused. So I just feel like back in the day, no one really talked about it, not even like professors.
So define narcissist. Are there multiple types of narcissists, or is there just one type, or what exactly does that mean? What's the definition of a narcissist?
So I think there's a difference between someone who has narcissistic personality disorder and someone who has narcissistic traits. So narcissism is a spectrum. There's people lower on the spectrum and higher on the spectrum. So somebody with narcissistic personality has a little bit more pervasive traits compared to somebody who just has narcissistic traits. And they're a little bit easier to deal with. So in order to understand narcissism, I would say it's important to understand the traits. So somebody who is, for example, they feel superiority over other people. They're very self-centered. They lack empathy. They don't take responsibility or accountability for anything. What else? They're controlling. They feel like they have power over everybody else, right? Sometimes they say there's this godlike complex that they have. They feel inferior over everybody else. Everybody is looked down upon for them.
You mean superior to everybody?
Superior, sorry, yeah. They feel superior over other people. And so they have this godlike complex where they feel like they're above even the law sometimes.
So you mentioned something about being in a narcissistic relationship. What was it that kind of blinded you from that, not knowing that this individual that I'm with, possibly, I don't know if you were engaged to him, I don't know if there was plans of wedding bells, but how long did it take for you to realize, holy crap, this is a toxic relationship that I'm in?
It definitely felt not good. Like in my gut, I felt like something was wrong from the beginning. But because that person was very charismatic and charming, that's what really got to me. And that's the thing about narcissists. And it wasn't just one narcissist I was dealing with. It just took one narcissistic person to really shake up my world and for me to open my eyes and recognize there's a pattern there. But there is this charm, like, behavior that they have where they suck the person in pretty quickly. And you think that you found your Prince Charming, or, this is too good. It feels too good to be true. It really was. So they have ways to suck you in the relationship. For example, they try to love bomb you. Some narcissists, they give extravagant gifts or take you extravagant places, or not even doing those things. They could do simple things, just, surprise you with little things, do little, write little notes for you. Even those little small gestures can really make you feel special to them.
Well, I mean, both of us are married. I think.
Are you questioning it?
No.
The way you say, well, both of us are married, and you look at me like.
Well, just like you're confirming the therapist license, I'm confirming both of our
status.
Yes.
wedding vows.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's on.
Well, I'm not wearing mine, but sorry. But so you describing, let's say, take him to extravagant places. Let's say you're the girl you're dating, or leaving small little notes and all that. I mean, I'm sure we've both done some of those things.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys may do those things as well, right? That's our way of showing, okay, you're special. You're not like every other girl that I've dated and all. So, but there has to be a barrier you cross where it's like, okay, now that's narcissistic. It's not just about, can't be just about the notes you leave. It's not about the love text. It's not about the gifts or the restaurants. It has to go above and beyond that as far as making the woman or sometimes the man feel a certain way. Can you kind of unpack that portion of it as far as what was it about your specific relationship where you were like, wow, this guy is a narcissist? I don't think it's just what you just explained about the gifts and the notes and all that stuff.
It definitely goes beyond that.
Yeah.
I think there's that's like a masking technique, isn't it?
I was going to ask you about, you said you give little notes or those like cute little gestures you do for your wife. Do you do it to control her?
No, it's a genuine.
Exactly. So that's the difference between someone who does genuine nice things because that's just the person that they are, versus someone who's narcissistic. They do it to gain power over their partner, to control them, to suck them in, to isolate them from friends and family so that they attach themselves to the relationship.
It's basically very much me, I. It's all about them at this point.
But, they're very much self-centered. It is about them because they need constant admiration and attention. So if I went out with, okay, for example, here's the difference between, there are different narcissistic people out there. There's different types. For example, there's covert and overt narcissists. So covert narcissists are, different in public. They might, you might know a covert narcissist where you don't even realize it. They could be sitting in front of you. They can be sitting next to you.
I'm not going to say anything.
But on that note, the difference is that you won't notice because they might be really kind and loving and charismatic and charming, but behind closed doors, they devalue their partner. They treat them horribly. They could be verbally abusive, psychologically abusive, mentally, financially abusive.
That's the covert.
That's the covert.
And the overt is the opposite, or?
Yeah, so the overt is someone like you can tell they're narcissistic. Like have you seen like celebrities or something on TV? You're like, oh, this guy is kind of, or this girl's kind of egotistical. We were talking about like men and women, right?
Yeah.
They can both be narcissistic. So they show it, right? They show it to the public, and you're like, this person's kind of egotistical, and it's all about them.
Well, you being or having been a personal assistant in Hollywood, right? Because I remember hearing stories about so-and-so actress or so-and-so, entertainer has to have this type of coffee and this type of water and this type of celery sticks with this type of yogurt dip in their RV, whatever that thing
Trailer.
is. Trailer, yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's narcissistic. It's like, okay, you really have to have that brand of water, huh? You can't just drink any other brand of water because it's going to screw up your GI system. Or you have to have that specific brand of carrots with that specific brand of, to me, that's narcissistic. It's their way of trying to show, I demand I have specific needs you need to meet if you want me as an actor or as an entertainer to be on your set. Would that be a definition of an overt narcissist or no?
Yeah, I think so. But it goes beyond that. It's not just like these are specifics that I need and that I want, but also how they treat people. It's not about, the cute little notes or the extravagant gifts. It's how they treat their partners, how they treat others behind closed doors, how they, if they even have empathy, if they show consideration, if they show any kind of like remorse. Narcissists don't have that. So that, I would say, is the biggest red flag to look out for, is how they treat their partners, ultimately.
Because the word narcissism is thrown around very loosely in today's society. And I think that's something where a lot of people have to take a couple steps back and understand what it is to be an actual narcissist in order for you to throw the word out so loosely. being selfish in life, would you consider that being narcissistic, or is it okay to be selfish once in a while? But then it goes back to what you were mentioning as far as empathy, right? There are a lot of people in this world who are somewhat selfish when it comes to certain things, but they have empathy as well when it comes to, I don't know, whether it's charity or whether it's towards family members, whatever it is. So that's the one thing I think society needs to change, is using that word so loosely, the word narcissist. Because I don't think they've actually been in an actual narcissistic relationship to understand what it is that people actually go through. And I could just tell by your body language and how you're speaking that you were really in a toxic relationship where this individual, whoever it was, thank God you're not with him anymore, was really...
Well, I'm in a healthy relationship and I'm engaged. So
Congratulations, by the way.
I'm happy to say that.
Yeah,
honestly.
so they basically belittle you, not only in front of people, but, you know, in front of family, I'm assuming, as well.
Well, the covert narcissist that I was with did not do that.
Oh, so he was undercover.
He was very undercover. Everything was behind closed doors in front of people. He was loving. It was kind. You know, he would show affection and care. And behind closed doors, you know, sometimes he would start acting cold, for example. He would shut down. He wouldn't talk to me. You know, I also felt very isolated from friends and family because the narcissist really just needed constant admiration and attention, constant, and validation. So one of the things that you brought up, Arno, is narcissism is a pattern. The difference between somebody who is sometimes selfish or sometimes lacks that empathy or could be angry and, you know, pissed, you know, on, like, they could be mad at their wife, right? But the difference with narcissists is the fact that it's a pattern. It's a pattern of pathological lying. It's a pattern of lack of empathy. It's a pattern of, you know, devaluing their partner. It's a pattern. And a cycle.
Here's what one of our followers actually messaged me when she knew we were going to have you as a guest. She said, yeah, she was married to a narcissist for many years. She said, many people stay in narcissistic relationships because they don't get physically abused. They don't know that emotional, financial, mental, or verbal abuse is as detrimental or damaging as physical abuse.
I agree.
Would you agree with that?
I agree. I feel like there's still a level of pain that you go through, whether it is physical, verbal, emotional, psychological. The pain and the anxiety and the depression that you feel when you're in that relationship is detrimental to mental health. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people in these types of relationships stay because of hope that someday they'll change, hope that, like, if they have kids, you know, they want to stay for their kids. But believe it or not, as the narcissist gets older, their fragile ego gets worse and their narcissism gets worse over time.
Do you think that they'll eventually pour into the child's relationship?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not only like a partner sort of thing. It actually pours into the children.
It depends on how they treat their children. Sometimes their child is like bait, you know. Sometimes they make themselves look like the perfect father figure, but they're not. They might treat their children very nice and loving, or they might put them on a pedestal and the child becomes narcissistic. It's just how you raise your child. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is how they become narcissistic. And there's different ways of how a narcissist becomes that. One of them is when their parents put them on a pedestal. They put them on a pedestal until they get higher and higher and higher, and there's no coming down after that. So I do think that sometimes we create the narcissists because people enable them.
I could see that. Because you see a lot of powerful people, and I'm not only talking about Hollywood, but You can get into the political scale. You can get into
Business.
business scale, absolutely, where they come from a certain upbringing. And that pedestal is what you're talking about, where, your child is expected to perform a certain way, act a certain way, and they're handed everything. They don't actually work for it. And what's going to happen is, if for any reason you ask your child to work for something, they'll be like, well, what are you talking about? This is how you've upraised me. This is how it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Where if you actually work for it, I think the child will develop differently. I think the child will understand the value of not only the business, not only the money, but what truly went into creating what the parents have created.
Yeah, but I think the expectation part, I don't know if I agree with the expectation, because we have expectations of our children, right? That's how we set as far as the boundaries, what's good, what's bad. So the expectation is not necessarily, I don't think, is what's creating the everything else I agree with as far as what's being handed to them. But the expectation, you have to have expectations as a parent, because how else do your kids know?
Well, let me redefine what I was mentioning. Not expectations as far as what your child will achieve, but what the child is expecting from you. So, for example, if you have a daughter and she doesn't earn whatever it is, let's say, for example, a car. You get her a Beamer, a really brand new Beamer, and her lease is up. Do you think that child would be expecting a used car after that Beamer, or would she be expecting another new car?
Better car.
A better car, possibly.
Right.
But if you get your kid a car and you say, listen, I'll put the down payment, you make the payments, and you pay for the insurance, the rest is on you. I think that's a better way of approaching that child, where whatever they're working for, they're understanding, all right, I'm working, I'm making the payments. Yeah, mom and dad help me with the down, but they're not making my payments. Whereas the other way around, if mom and dad get you the car, they make your payments, they do the insurance, all that stuff, and you're just sitting back, chilling, relaxing, and your lease is up, what are you going to be expecting again? You're going to be expecting something better. I think that's where I was going with it.
Yeah, that I agree with, because at that point, you're setting the expectations as far as we're going to pay a portion of it, the rest you're responsible for. Are you sure you want an $800 a month payment? Because you're only making $1,100 a month, working part-time at wherever you work, right?
Exactly.
And most kids will say, that's too much of my money going into the car. Why don't we look at a $400 a month payment instead of $800?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I also think that like kids and teenagers are kind of narcissistic anyway, because we kind of are, it's all about us, right? Growing up. And you have to either get out of it, or that trait continues. It's all about me. And so I just feel like parents do have a big role in how they model behavior to their kids. And I agree, you can't not have expectations, but I do think what you model to your children is how they're going to take that on, because there are narcissists who have had a narcissistic parent. So they picked up on those traits thinking it's normalized, and then they become narcissists themselves. So it's not about expectations. It's not about giving him a BMW, right? Like it's okay for them to drive the BMW as long as they earn it, right? I also think that there has to be some sort of emotional intelligence that you teach children growing up, because without the empathy, it becomes a problem as an adult.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And that's something we've mentioned on the show multiple times. Your children eventually begin to mimic you as an individual. And what you portray to them, that is what they will become. From the way you walk, from the way you talk, from the way you act, everything. I mean, just recently I've been noticing, my son as well, he's been acting a certain way as well. Like, for example, if I walk past my wife and, in the mornings, I'll give her a hug, give her a kiss when she's home, he'll get jealous of it. Like, it's like, oh, you know what? No, this is, I got to do that as well. So he'll run and he'll do that as well. Whereas if you're ignoring the individual that you're married to, if you're ignoring the kids, what are they going to get used to? They're going to get used to waking up in the mornings, not saying good morning, walking past you, And then eventually, as time progresses and they become teenagers, then you're going to turn around and say, hey, where's my good morning? Where's my hey?
You know how
Where's
you
my
can
how?
test them out?
How?
Next time, instead of hugging her, kissing her, hit her. See if he hits her or you. I'll tell you if he's a narcissist.
That sounds very narcissistic of you.
Yeah, seriously. I was gonna say.
Son, you got to lean into it. You gotta lean into it.
Hey, that's how you figure out which direction your boys are.
which direction you're going.
What's up, Joe?
growing
Did
up.
you want to say something, Joe?
Just a quick thing. I wanted to specify the 7 different narcissists that I just found in regards to like the levels: grandiose, which you talked about, vulnerable or covert narcissism, malignant narcissism, communal narcissism, somatic narcissism, cerebral narcissism, and spiritual narcissism. If you guys want to get into details.
Cerebral?
Yes.
I mean, that's a new one that I haven't heard of.
Jeez.
That would be
Sounds violent.
cerebral narcissists that derive their sense of superiority from their intellect or mental abilities, believing they are more intelligent or knowledgeable than others. Behavior, they often belittle others or being less intelligent and seek admiration for their intellectual achievements or knowledge.
See, I think with this type of personality, which is what you would call it, right? It's a personality at the end of the day. I don't know how people are wired that way. When you get into a room and you're surrounded by people, a lot of the times what they say is you want to make sure you're surrounded by people that are smarter than you because you learn something from it. But if you're in a room and you think you're the smartest one and you think you really can't grasp something or learn something from another individual, I really think there's something individually wrong with you. Like mentally, something's wrong with you.
But do they actually think they're smarter than, in his example, do they actually think they're smarter than everybody else in the room? Or they act that way to fulfill and feed on their ego and narcissism?
No, they're convinced.
They are convinced.
They're convinced they are smarter than you. They're convinced they're above it all. I know some narcissists too, like they just try to get away with things. You know, I heard a story where they got stopped by a cop and they try to like get out and lie. And you know, those are just like small examples of just feeling like you're above the law and you can get away with it. And I guess that's what we were talking about before about like power. What power comes also with control, and you feel like you can get away with anything. So yeah, I do think that they feel like they truly believe that they're smarter than you, and they won't show it. They really won't show it. That's the thing. They're like chameleons. They can change the way they'll change themselves depending on who they're talking to.
Sounds like one of the Avengers. So how does somebody
They transform.
How does somebody in that type of relationship notice or figure out that, gee, I'm in this type of I'm in a relationship with the narcissist? Because if they're chameleons and they transform and everything else you said, I mean, how does one pause and say, gee, I am in a relationship with a narcissist?
I guess I can share my personal experience of understanding where it hit me. When I became aware of it was that when I was already like isolated from my friends and family. I didn't spend time with my friends as much. I wouldn't hang out with them because I felt the need also to please the narcissist because they needed the attention and admiration. And I recognized if I didn't give it, and if I would just go to a friend's house or I would have a friend's birthday, the next day, the narcissist would act cold. They wouldn't look at you. They wouldn't acknowledge you. And so I was confused. I'm like, did I do something wrong? What did I do?
So they put you on a guilt trip.
Yeah. Yeah, they make you feel guilty. And they don't need to tell you, hey, you can't go out with your friends, right? Because that's more over. You're like, okay, you're just controlling. But what if they don't tell you what to do and what to wear? And what if they don't? That's even worse because they manipulate you slowly but surely, gaslighting you to believe that you're the problem.
Oh, jeez.
It's kind of crazy making when you think about it, isn't it? It really is. That's why a lot of people who are in these relationships feel like they're going crazy because the narcissist twists your reality and your perceptions. You're like the puppet in their world, unfortunately. It's really sad.
Are more men narcissists or women? Do you know?
I knew you were gonna bring that up. I knew that. I don't know why I knew you were gonna bring that
I'm a
up.
narcissist.
I do think, obviously if I say a certain thing, because I'm a woman, so if I say like, yeah, there's more men, it's not about that. I'm noticing that it's both. The only difference is men don't seek help. More men are coming out and saying, you know what, my girlfriend, what is a narcissist or was a narcissist, or my ex-girlfriend. But I just feel like, depending on, I think we were talking about with Arno, you said you were reading a book with your wife, and
Yes.
you were saying about like you were reading the book on something about like
Upbringing boys and upbringing girls.
upbringing boys and girls.
Yes.
And I do think it's how you raise your kids. I really do. And so if you raise your kids as like, as a guy, it could be like, oh, get up, don't cry, you can't cry. It's not always. I'm not saying it's always, because I'm not sure how you guys grew up, if you had a parent who taught you guys not to cry. You guys aren't narcissistic, right? So you guys didn't grow up narcissistic.
We'll figure that out by the end of the show.
You see what I'm saying? It's not always the case, but there is something that happens in a child's brain, where they get older and they lack empathy because they didn't learn it. So they use their ego and their power because they didn't get the validation they needed when they were younger. They didn't get the affection that they needed when they were younger.
So if let's say you're raising a son, right? And they whine about every little thing. How do you determine, okay, this one, I'm going to cut it off. This one I'm not, because I want them to grow up and understand empathy and not to be a narcissist. I mean, there has to be, you can't just be, especially as a father, raising boys. You cannot be like, it's okay, you can cry about this, you can cry about that. Yeah, you want to whine and bitch about, no problem, don't worry about it. Because I want to be, I want to accept your emotions as they come. I think you can have a discussion about it. Okay, why are you crying? I don't know. Well, no, you need to know. Why are you crying? At a certain age, obviously, not at 2 years old. At a certain age, 4, 5, 6, I think at that point, they know exactly why they're crying. They may be even manipulating you through their tears and their emotions. Because at that age, I think they understand most of their actions and what it's going to lead to. So how do you deal with that without raising these, new generational boys where they're like, feminine and because
Can I say one thing on what you said? In the book that we're reading right now, it brought up one thing where I've been actually using it with both my kids, and it works phenomenally. So as a child, when you're growing up, you see mom and dad as the, mom and dad. They're the leaders. I got to listen to them. But you know what? Children do become rebellious as well, regardless of the age. When a child is throwing some sort of tantrum or they're acting up, instead of standing over them and yelling at them, you bring yourself down to their level. So what you do is you actually kneel down.
Exactly.
Which was,
That's how I talk to you usually.
Shut the fuck.
I need drum roll for this one.
That was a good one.
Fist
gee.
pump.
That was a good one.
What a moment.
Wow.
What a moment.
I have no idea which button does
It's the
that,
turquoise one, I think.
the turquoise.
Edgar's not here.
Let me try it.
No.
No,
Oh, it's
never.
off. It's off.
Okay.
Anyways, so I don't even know how I can continue with this conversation anymore.
Timestamp this one. Oh,
Jeez. So you literally kneel down to your child's level. And I noticed my son was throwing a tantrum a couple weeks ago. And I was like, okay, I have to try this out to see if it actually works. So I literally kneel down to his level and I look him straight in the eyes. I go, calm down. What's going on? Come on, talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Obviously, you can't have a intellectual, full-on, blown-out conversation with a 2-year-old. But me kneeling down, looking him in the eyes, calmed him down completely.
Yeah.
So these are the things that parents need to do with their children in order to not screw up the wiring that's in their brain, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it is.
That's actually the same advice I give my nurses when I say, listen, if you're dealing with, when you're talking to a patient, don't stand above their head. Unless it's just your basic conversation, it's fine. But if you see they're dealing with pain or some type of distress, get to their level, sit on your knees and communicate, put your hand on their knee, let them also feel you, and then have the conversation. And they'll hear you out much better than you standing over them, like you said, and just preaching to them. Well, where does it hurt? Have you taken this medication? They don't give a crap about what you're talking about because you're trying to be an authoritative figure. And at that point, they just need somebody to listen to them, which means, like you said, get to their level and have that conversation heart to heart. And it's going to be far more effective than just speaking above them.
Yeah.
Well, the key thing is conversation. And, I personally didn't grow up having conversations with my parents. It wasn't like, hey, like, how are you feeling? Or let's talk about it. I was like the oldest. So they're like, get up, be tough, So I didn't have that either. But I think I've developed a very extreme empathetic nature, which I think that it kind of guided me to narcissistic relationships because I just felt very much forgive. I had this forgiving nature of mine and hope that like my love can change someone, but that's not the case at all. I had to work on my self-esteem. I had to work on my sense of worth to recognize I deserved better.
So very quickly, going back to men and women as far as which one tends to be more narcissistic, it's actually men.
Yeah, I figured.
Men are statistically known to be more narcissistic. But again, mind you, it's a very, very narrow margin as far as the gap between men and women. But they do say statistically women are more covert narcissists.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's very true.
So that's the difference.
I do think that research is changing because and progressing because I do think more men are coming out and speaking about their narcissistic partner, right? So I do think things are changing, and you're going to see a little balance between men and women now.
I think it's a cultural shock as well, though, because our culture is known to not speak about certain things.
Well, it's taboo. It's the shame attached to talking about these things.
Yeah, but I think all statistics are based on the number of people that are actually willing to go out there and speak to therapists, right? And this is beyond our culture. If we've got, 8.5 billion people around the globe, and only, say, 10% of the narcissists or people who are in narcissistic relationships go to therapists, and that's how the statistics are collected, then the numbers are going to be off. But it doesn't make sense that more men would be narcissistic than women.
So sorry, hate to cut in, but there's key takeaways on this. Men are more, from what I'm getting over here, men are more likely than women to exhibit more grandiose narcissism, while women are more likely to exhibit vulnerable narcissism. That's according to what I have on my screen right now.
Grandiose?
Yes, what we were originally talking about.
Is that LGBTQ grandiose? What type of grandiose are we talking?
I think grandiose means oh, let's jump in my Ferrari. I have my mansion. It's my Prada shirt. That's what they mean about grandiose, talking about excessive things. People, not all people do that, but that is what grandiose narcissists are.
Sounds like Andrew Tate.
You see them talking about money and what they have.
Now, how about because I've seen this over the years where, let's say, a parent loses their partner, and they're dealing with grief, and then that grief ends up causing tension within their family because whether it's the mom or the dad, but it's mostly, in most cases, it's with moms because typically husbands pass away earlier than wives do. Men pass away at a younger age than women do. And then that mom will develop, make their kids feel guilty for living their lives, or especially in extreme cases where they've even lost one of the children, where the mom will, whether directly or indirectly, make one of the kids feel guilty for moving on with their lives and not grieving the same way that their mom is grieving. Would you define that mother as a narcissist? And did they become a narcissist because of the grief? Can grief lead to an extreme narcissism, or is that...
Not necessarily. Narcissism starts at a young age, right? Like I said, I do think, as a teenager, it was all about me. So I feel like I had some of those traits, but I did get over that. And I do think most teenagers do. You just get over it. But people who really have their narcissistic traits continue over time. They've had it before the grief.
So then how would you define that? What would you, I guess, label that as?
Depends if she's displaying it to the public and showing her behaviors in front of everyone. So is she publicly expressing that she needs attention? Is she victimizing herself? Is she showing it to other people?
I'm trying to comprehend what you're saying by that, though. Like, is she putting the kids in a guilt trip as far as how they're living their lives, not coming to visit her, or
it's
what
not
is
about,
it?
It's not about visitations. It's more so about how have you overcome your grief so quickly, and you're traveling now. You're going out to restaurants as if nothing happened.
I don't think that's I wouldn't consider that as narcissism.
I think the parent is still in the acceptance phase of the passing. They haven't accepted it fully yet. That's my opinion. Because when you're married with somebody and you're living your life with them, whether you get married in a church, in a mosque, in a temple, doesn't matter what it is, you're devoting your life to that individual and you're vouching to God that you and I will live together until, one of us passes, or so death do us part, right? So when that individual is gone, unfortunately, now you're alone. You don't have that person next to you to play cards with, to have breakfast with, to have a conversation with. So that piece of your life is missing. And in order for you to fully accept it, it does take time. Now, maybe that person is, grieving a different way, or trying to accept that individual is no longer there, and they want some sort of attention from the next best thing, which is who? The offspring.
Right. But if, according to them, they're not getting enough attention as they seek or they want.
That's a conversation you have with them. What is it that you're looking for? What is it that I can do to make sure that you are happy? I think it's a conversation starter to see what it is. Because if you don't ask, you're not going to find out.
Because I've seen this with many families over the years where the mom just can't get over it. And the children are walking on eggshells around her because they feel guilty for enjoying any part of their life. And I'm trying to understand if that has anything to do with narcissism. Because it's like you sit down with them. The moment you sit down with them, all they talk about is that grief. And of course, part of it is because everybody deals with grief differently. Some get over it in 6 months, some in 6 years, some never get over it. When I say get over it, meaning where it's no longer...
Acceptance.
But as a parent, see, the one advice somebody gave me a couple of years back said, listen, as a parent, if you want to be a good parent, don't shoot for the stars and try to do this and that. If you don't give your problems to your kids, you're a wonderful parent. just don't give your problems to your kids. You deal with your own problems. Never pass your problems on to your kids. And that's it. That's as simple and as, I guess, as far as he went when I had this conversation with him a few years back. But the reason I'm asking this, because there was a question in one of our viewers asking about that, and it brought up some of the examples that I've seen over the years. Because there's been, obviously with my patients, I'm not intimate with their families. I don't see how they're dealing with the grief. But there have been several family members, extended family, who have passed on, and I've seen how different people deal with the grief. And that's what I've also noticed, is like they just don't allow their kids to move on. And to me, that's very wrong, because your life is you. You live your life. Even me as a father, right? I have 2 boys. Even with my wife, I always tell her, look, as much as I want to, I can't feel what you feel. You can't feel what I feel. I can't feel what my boys feel. This life, we're born alone and we die alone. It's just a process we go through where we build these relationships, we get married, we have kids, then they go on and they get married and they have their own kids and all that. But at the end of the day, we live all alone with our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, our pain, physical, all of that we deal with it on our own. As much as we can talk about it with the therapist or with our significant other, they cannot feel what you feel. So I don't think it's right for you to put that on to your kids or to your spouse, where you make them feel like shit because, you know what, you just can't get over this grief or whatever the life situation may be.
So let me really quickly go over the steps of what a person goes through when somebody passes. So this might kind of help piggyback on what you were saying. So number 1 is shock and denial. Number 2 is pain and guilt. Number 3 is anger. Number 4 is depression. No, what is it?
There's sadness and then bargaining.
Yeah,
stage,
bargaining.
And then
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
acceptance.
Number 4 is bargaining. Number 5 is depression. Number 6 is reconstruction. And then number 7 is acceptance and hope. So basically, this individual who you're speaking about is still in their pain and guilt.
But how are the kids in any way responsible or guilty of that?
I do think you're talking about projection. So I do think that like parents project their own insecurities, their own guilt, their own shame onto their kids subconsciously. And so the kids pick it up as like, you know, what can I do differently? Do I need to do more? Do I need to be there for my mom even more? So there is like, they do feel guilty because of the parent projecting. But that's something that they have to work on setting a boundary with their parent.
I think in our culture as well, and I think not only in the Armenian culture, but whether you're Middle Eastern, whether you're Armenian, Jewish, Muslim, doesn't matter. When somebody passes, there's always family gatherings at the person's house. And you're always there, you're in front of each other. And I think there's I think it's overdone as far as how you grieve or how you deal with the passing of that person, where you possibly give too much attention to, let's say, for example, the mother. You're always there. Mom, can I get you this? Mom, can I get you that? Mom, can I do this for you? Mom, let me take you here. And then eventually that person kind of gets used to that. Well, my husband's no longer here. My kids are here. Oh, look what they've done for me all this time. In a matter of a very short span of time, you spoil them.
Isn't that an expectation, though, you grew up with? Like expecting that your son or daughter is going to take care of you?
No, I wouldn't want that.
Right, but in certain cultures, in our culture too, there's an expectation that like my son or daughter is going to take care of me.
Correct, but it all depends on how that individual was raised as well.
True.
See, for me, I want to make sure that I leave something behind for my children where I don't become a burden for them. Literally, like when I'm not working anymore and I'm just retired, I don't want to live off of my children. I want them to be literally the empty nesters that they're supposed to be.
But she's not referring to financial. She's referring to.
It could be anything. It
She's
doesn't.
referring to the character. Like, for example, in a lot of Asian cultures, Armenian cultures, Hispanic, which I've experienced, even American culture too, with certain families, they do feel that there's an expectation and obligation to take care of their parents when they're at their senior ages, meaning they can no longer care for themselves, and whether it's to take them to their home to live with them or bring somebody to help them out. That's an expectation we also have.
Correct. See,
right?
I know my parents, for example. My parents have said this multiple times, where they say, "You guys do your thing, we're doing our thing. Don't worry about us." But for me, my obligation is I'm in debt to my parents for the rest of my life, for them allowing me to live where I am, and what I've achieved in my life is because of them. So I consider it as a debt to them for the rest of my life. Them, on the other hand, they're saying, no, we don't want to be a burden in your life. We're fine. Do your thing. I'm looking at my children the same way. I want to make sure I do the same for my kids, so I don't be a burden for them. But when it comes time for my parents, I want to be there for them, even though they're going to be pushing me away. So I think it is a cultural thing, and I think it all depends on the individual as well.
I think this is the example I brought up is a little bit different, and I'll break it down maybe a little bit more. And Natalie, you can touch on it as far as your professional input on it, because, for example, my father passed away a little over 3 years ago, right? They were married for 42 years, but as tough as it's been on my mom, she's never ever showed anything in front of my kids. She comes, she plays with my kids, or my kids are at their house, my brother's kids, my sister's kids. She has never ever shown any type of emotion, grief, any type of, whatever she's dealing with internally. But I know moms who will go to their kids' houses and they will sit there and cry about it, and where now the grandkids are being affected by this. It's like, okay, we understand grandpa passed away, but you crying in front of your grandkids every single time you're around them is not going to bring them back. All you're doing is now creating this unnecessary stress in that young family.
So negative energy.
For absolutely no reason. So why would it may not be intentional, but I still think you have to have enough control as an adult at a certain point in your life where, especially with little kids, you cannot give out that type of energy to them, because they're too young to deal with that type of emotions.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, first of all, sorry for your loss. I mean, that's, even though it's 3 years, it still feels probably so new and fresh. That doesn't go away, the pain. But I do feel like you only have control over yourself. You don't have control over how much the person cries and what she does. And the only thing you can do is set boundaries. But everybody, goes through grief in different ways. Some stay lingering for years if they don't work on it. Others just go through their grieving process, like suppressing their emotions. Sometimes that happens to stay strong for their family. And others just are more expressive and continuously showing it. I think that's just something that you have to set boundaries if that doesn't work for that family, or it's continuous and you don't want your kids to see it all the time. But I also think that, again, there has to be a point where it stops. But again, everybody has a different time when it comes to grieving.
I think generationally it'll change. I think those are the old kind of generations that are kind of still wired to that mentality.
Yeah, people get stuck in the sadness. They get stuck in the sadness for years sometimes.
And that's why, for me, I think, well, let me ask you this before I tell you what do you think is, if you could say what is the most important skill an individual can learn or develop that's going to be the most useful and helpful throughout their life?
That's a very good question. I don't think it's one answer. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's emotional intelligence, which includes empathy. I think it's understanding how to effectively communicate. And I also think it's affection. Affection.
Which kind of ties into communication, wouldn't you say?
Well, affection is like, if you guys have heard 5 languages of love, it's like, how do you show your love? And affection could be hugging and kissing and touching, physical touch. So to me, that would be affection.
What would you say it is?
The number one skill?
Yeah.
As I've mentioned it many times, it's if I can teach my boys how to process things, that would be the number one thing I can teach them. Because regardless of what you deal with in life, at any age, whether it's the most extreme, the least extreme, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to losing a loved one, losing a job, or any relationship. When I say losing, it's not necessarily death. It's any type of loss, right? It could be just...
Even toxic relationships.
Yeah. If you don't know how to process it, that's how you fall into this spider web of panic and anxiety and mental illness and challenges, because you just think every little thing is the biggest catastrophe in the world for you, because you don't understand how to process it. It's like, I lost my job. Okay, I'm going to kill myself. Really? That's all it takes for you to kill yourself? You lost your job? You don't think there's another job out there for you? You don't think there's another guy, another girl for you? That's it, you're done? Because to them it's like, oh shit, the world's falling apart. No, it's not. Because you just don't know how to process that situation you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So to me, that's, as a father, if I could teach my kids how to process things in life, I won't worry about anything. That's how I feel. I don't know.
Yeah, taking those couple steps back and just reevaluating situations, knowing that it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. And speaking of, because by the way, before we get into, because I was going to suggest we dive into, since I mentioned anxiety, but going back to narcissism, do you think social media has kind of added fuel to the fire?
Oh, absolutely. It's like the narcissistic social platform where they can show how wonderful they are and how, generous they are, and they do so good in the world, and their relationship is amazing. And so it's, grass is not greener on the other side.
No, there's this phenomenal page on Instagram. It's called Scumbag Dad.
Have you seen it?
He is, the guy's amazing at what he does. He does these little skits where he'll pretend like he's like these social media influencers, where he'll actually have the camera holding, doing like a selfie video, and he's handing money to somebody. But then, a typical influencer will shut the camera off and do whatever they're going to do. But he leaves it off and he leaves it on and goes, all right, let me get the money back again. And then he'll go do it somewhere else, and he'll do it somewhere else. And it goes back to showing, what social media has done to people as far as the narcissistic behaviors that it's created. It's created this fake image where people are living this lavish and luxurious lifestyle when they're not really, they're just the only thing that they're feeding is their own ego at this point.
Even couples, when they're showing like they're on extravagant trips and they're having a great time, and like people look at it and compare themselves and they're like, why can't I have that? But behind closed doors, that one partner could be the most abusive partner. You don't know that. Yeah. So it's like whatever you see on social media isn't always real.
Yeah. Nelly had a great quote about that. She says, if the devil can't get to you, he sends a narcissist.
Ooh.
Oh, I got to use that. Thank you for that. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the trips that they go on. There's so many couples where you see it. We were in Mexico just a couple of months ago. We were there with the family, enjoying our time, and mind you, juggling 2 children in Mexico at a resort is
Not physically, right? Just
yes, not physically,
Okay,
not
good.
physically. I'm not that strong. Remember, you got to kneel down to my level too. I don't know if that's a good thing or if it's a bad thing. Because you could take it and literally say, you kneel down to my level.
I think everybody's trying to picture. Okay, when Arman talks to others, usually
He's gonna kneel down.
Listen, guys, I'm 5'6" on a good day. But anyways,
Arman jump up and jump up and
yeah, Armand picks me up and just goes, "Woody." God, they're not going to hear the end of this. But, we're there, 2 kids, we're enjoying our time. And, you look across the pool or the restaurant and you see the couples basically taking a picture of their food, taking a picture of themselves, smiling. And then this goes down, the phone goes down, and it's just silence.
and arguments.
Yeah.
And sometimes arguments. And it's kind of like, who are you lying to? Look, you're not even lying to the people on the internet. You're lying to yourself. And unfortunately, that's going to create a even more toxic relationship. And as time goes on, you guys are going to get more and more sick of each other. And eventually, it's like an atomic bomb. It could only handle so much pressure before it explodes.
Yeah, I feel like I've also gone down that rabbit hole too. It's just like what you see on social media. You're like, okay, am I doing something wrong? Not posting my, dinner? And so it's like
People think I can't afford dinner.
yeah, exactly. It's like I can go to that nice restaurant too, and I'm gonna take a picture. But I've gone down that rabbit hole, and it's like, it's like this. Well, we want some validation of like, yeah, I've been there and stuff. But I don't think it's always narcissistic. But when it comes to couples, I always tell couples when I see them in session, put the phone away. Put the phone away, put
During
it
this session or just in life?
in life.
Oh, okay.
So I teach them, you have to teach them in a way, because what happens is the less they communicate, the basically more they distance themselves emotionally from each other. That's why there's a lot of problems in couples who don't check in with each other, who don't communicate their needs and wants, who don't have date nights.
But how do you, because look, the word narcissist is thrown out there probably these days as often as racist and all these.
Yeah, I mentioned it loosely.
Very loosely. So, and then it loses its value, right?
Exactly.
When it's being overused.
Right.
So let's say if let's say a woman is coming to you and saying, look, I think I'm married to a narcissist. How do you identify whether the information she's giving you is just her perspective as far as because she's selfish, or let he or she, but in this case, let's say she's selfish and is not able to really understand the different roles that they play as husband and wife. How do you determine if that information is accurate enough for you to determine whether she's married to a narcissist, or is it just because she's so insecure and doesn't want to fulfill the role that, because as husband and wife, we have roles, right? We have different, as human beings, we have different roles in life. I have multiple roles in my life. For example, I'm a co-host here with Arno. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm an employer. I'm a friend. I'm a cousin and nephew and
Uncle.
grandson, uncle.
That's the most important one you forgot.
Yeah, sometimes I identify as an aunt too, but so how do you determine as far as whether it's because there's a misunderstanding or kind of gendering of their roles? They don't understand what it really entails versus, yes, you are truly married to a narcissist.
There's a couple of things that I ask them. I ask them to give examples. Give me an example of what it looks like when you argue. Give me an example of what it looks like when he or she gaslights you. I can spot it pretty well now after doing a lot of research, after my personal experience. I could know. I spot a narcissist if it's in front of me. I really, really do. So you get better at, I guess, knowing the traits that are in front of you. So I have I've had someone who has come and said their partner is narcissistic, but it's really them because they don't take responsibility and accountability. They're blaming their partner when they're in session. They're victimizing themselves, you know, and said, well, I've done this and I've done that for that person. And, you know, so they victimize themselves. And you really, there is a cycle of abuse when it comes to narcissists. And you know that person is a survivor in the relationship because they've done their homework. Most clients that come to me, they've done their homework. They've Googled the personality or the problem in their relationship. And they've recognized through videos and through articles that, you know, these traits they resemble a narcissist. They resemble their partner. So the way I know it is when there's a cycle of abuse, when they give examples of what gaslighting looks like, and when they do, I realize that they're in an abusive relationship. And I have to say, it's not just narcissists who are the problem. It's also, I think, us, right? We're choosing these people. And there's a reason why we're choosing these people. And that's something that I also work on with my clients. I work on understanding their childhood because there's a reason you're attracted to a narcissist.
Is it because one of their parents was a narcissist?
It could be they were raised by a narcissistic parent. It could be that nothing was ever good enough. No matter what they did, it was not good enough for their parents. It could be someone who was sexually abused, someone who was verbally, psychologically, mentally abused growing up, and they become empaths and they don't realize subconsciously that they are attracting narcissists or they're choosing narcissists because it's so normalized for them.
Yeah, it's because I think just bringing up the topic of your significant other or your girlfriend or your whoever it is to a therapist. What was that saying that they mentioned? They said the narcissist is the one that doesn't believe that they are one. Is that what it was?
Exactly. Yeah. There are people who come to my session and say like, am I the narcissist? There isn't one narcissist
That will accept they are
that
one.
would ever admit they're narcissists. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but apparently there's narcissists who are on social media saying they're narcissistic and talking about their personality from a narcissistic viewpoint. Have you guys seen that?
No.
So that's what's happening and trending. I'm not sure how much I believe that because now you're using, I guess, social media to talk about your narcissism. I don't know if they've fully changed. It's just very odd to me. I have yet to believe that they're talking about narcissism as a way to help others maybe overcoming that. I don't get that yet. I'm still trying to figure that out.
So you're telling me not everything online is true?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Oh, God.
Gee, I'm going
Goes
to
back
delete
to that.
all my social media
I
because I thought
know.
everything was 100% factual.
There's a fact-checking button on purpose.
Oh, is that what it's for?
Well, that's what we've been fact-checked multiple times. But when you go back and look at some of the fact checks that we've talked about, hey, it came true.
Have they removed the...
I don't know. I got to go back and look. Oh, geez. You mentioned something about you working with children recently as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? So narcissism and children, I know we kind of dabbled just a little bit about it, but tell us a little bit about how you're working with kids as far as what you're doing right now.
So there's a lot of children who have anxiety. You know, it could be any anxiety. It could be like the pandemic anxiety, or it could have been like test anxiety. I also work with clients who have a narcissistic parent, and you know, their non-narcissistic parent is like bringing them to therapy and to like really work on it. And you can tell when children don't like one of their parents because children don't lie, right? Kids don't lie.
Never,
if anything,
no.
they're like really truthful. they have no filter. So you know who's the narcissistic parent when the child doesn't like them. So I do work on finding ways to cope with their narcissistic parent.
You know, when you said that, I just remembered. It's very common in Armenian families, right, where parents will like, like, do you love your mom or your dad?
The one asking is the narcissist.
That's so funny. I never.
Dude, I don't know if you ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very common thing in our culture where the parents will ask, and then sometimes the siblings will learn that and be like, "Mom, Pop, you know, who do you love better, me, him, or her? You know, which one of?"
But then it changes, doesn't it? I love Mom one day, I love Pop the next day. Whoever gives me like.
Yeah, depending on who bought the toy they wanted or what.
Oh God, bribery, huh?
But you know, but funny enough, I play that game with my kids occasionally, and they're so diplomatic about it. They're like, both of you. I'm like, you don't love one of us just a little bit more? Like, no, we love both of you. I'm like, all right, good.
You know what? I haven't done that with Eileen for a while. I should try it out on the way to school tomorrow when I'm dropping her off.
As you're kneeling down with the kids, you're like, who do you love more?
Who do you love? Exactly. Make sure you're kneeling down. Well, with Eileen, do you kneel down with Eileen too, or just Eileen?
You know, I got to put the ladder
That's
up to get to her.
a lot of TMI right now. It's not a therapy session.
Jeez.
But what was interesting the other day, my younger son, he's 4, Nico turned around to my wife and she goes, Mom, you're my favorite girl. And I'm like, where did this come from? Like, just out of the blue, like, you're my favorite girl. Because Noah will tease him sometimes, oh, you have a girlfriend, you have a crush on somebody. And then now it's developed into, no, I have a crush on Mom. Mom's my girl, my favorite girl. That's his...
That's his go-to now, huh? I don't have the girlfriend anymore. Mom's my girl.
mom's my girlfriend.
It sounds like you guys are, really great parents and have partners that are also really wonderfully, disciplined in a way. You know what I mean? Like both of you guys, because you guys are giving examples. Like you're reading a book, and you guys read books, and the way you're explaining your kids and how you approach things, I think it's so wonderful.
Well,
really,
thank you. That's validation.
Absolutely.
Take it.
Absolutely.
Take it for
validation. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds familiar. But
I appreciate that.
We really do. Look, at the end of the day, we try to be good parents. We try to be good fathers. And raising children comes hand in hand together. We've seen what society has become with certain parents missing from the picture. And, the worst case scenario is a divorce. And, if things aren't working out in a certain relationship, yeah, if mom and dad can't get along and it's a toxic environment, again, worst case scenario, it is a divorce. But don't take that negative energy and implement it into your child's life. If you are able to co-parent, by all means, make sure you raise good human beings. Thankfully for us, both Armand and I, Joe and his wife, my wife and me, we're in a very good relationship, and we understand our roles as parents. My wife understands her role. I understand my role. Are we perfect? No, nobody is perfect. If you think you're perfect, you're a narcissist. But
that's a good one, true.
Yeah, but till today, it's all a learning curve for all of us. My daughter started first grade, and we're going through now reading with her. And in the beginning, when we started, I would get frustrated. I would be like, oh my God, like, come on, Eileen, you know what this is. You know what this is. Come on, Eileen, And I realized that, no, dude, I'm putting pressure on this kid. I can't do that. So, taking a couple steps back, understanding, all right, dude, she's a freaking first grader. We gotta take it easy a little bit. Now it's more of like all right, we're going to do sight words. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And when she does it, and you help guide her in the process of it, and you make sure that how would you say it? You make sure you acknowledge to her that, what, you're doing a phenomenal job, and I'm here to help guide you in this journey that we're in. I think life has to be that way as well. It's like reading a book. You're helping your child guide your child through life, through everything. So that's what it is. The parents that are not involved in their children's life, you're going to turn around when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and what was that Armenian saying? They smack themselves across the head and say, oh my God, what did I do? Just be there for your kids. Be a good father, be a good mother.
Yeah, I guess it's easier said than done, because in a narcissistic relationship, you don't get that. You don't get co-parenting. The kids get the worst end of the stick. Even if they stay in a toxic relationship, the kids are seeing the abuse. And it's the worst thing ever. I hear it all the time. I'm staying for the kids. And I don't have judgment whether you stay or go. I will guide you no matter what, because it's very, very difficult to leave a narcissistic relationship. Very difficult. I have a book called Detoxing from a Narcissist, and we were talking about it, and I should have it. Yes, it's in my car, but
We have an author here who didn't bring her book with her.
I'm not narcissistic, right? If I didn't bring, I'm not showing off, but it's on Amazon. And I created this book because my license is in California, and I really, really wanted to get the word out there. And I want people to not feel alone. I want people to know that this is real, and narcissists are just pure evil. They're torturous, I have to say. They're really, really torturous. A lot of survivors deal with a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of, I would say, grief. Speaking of grief, right? We said grieving is not just a loss of someone, a death of someone. It's also a loss of a relationship. So I just want to say this because it's really, really difficult to be in a relationship with a narcissist, and it's really difficult to get out. And when clients get out, I praise them. And I feel like I should, celebrate for them. It's a celebration, because detoxing from a narcissist, it's like detoxing from alcohol. People go to rehab without the drug so that, they detox it out for 30, 60, 90 days. And it's very similar to a narcissist. It's very similar to a narcissistic relationship.
But I mean, is it that difficult to call quits on a relationship that you're not happy in?
Yes, it's very difficult, because it's a chemical imbalance that happens in the brain and the body. It's called trauma bond. So the reason why you get stuck in a narcissistic relationship is because you're already gaslit so much. Have you guys seen the movie? It's a 1940 black and white movie called I think it's called The Gaslight.
I wasn't born yet in 1940, so.
You can watch it though. I think it's called Gaslight, and it really shows an example of how the narcissist makes the partner feel like they're actually ill, they're sick. And so it's incredible. You have to see videos to really see what it's like to be with a narcissist, because they really make you feel like you're going crazy.
It's funny you say all this, because I'm kind of dissecting certain relationships that I've seen, and I'm realizing that shit, bro.
Yeah.
This individual that I know personally is checking all the boxes.
Oh yeah.
Like a relationship you had that?
No.
Individual,
No. A relationship that I know of.
I see.
That, they're married, they have children and all that. And again, not name dropping or anything, but I mean,
please do.
If my wife is watching, she's gonna know who I'm talking about.
Elena, don't write the names on the
No,
comment section.
don't. Yeah, don't write the names in the comment. But again, emotionally abusive in front of people, husband to wife, buys off certain things for this individual, for his wife, in order to keep her there, belittles her in front of people, talks down to her in front of family members.
He's overt.
Yet buys XYZ, takes her here, takes her there, makes sure she has the fillers in the right places and the surgeries and this and that. Now that you're looking back at this, I'm like, holy shit, bro, that is not a healthy relationship at all. And you see it, like you could probably see it in the girl's face that she's just there to basically either live off of the money enjoy what he's providing for her, but is willing to take the beating emotionally for it?
I think it's beyond money at that point. I don't think any money satisfies like someone being in an abusive relationship unless they're being threatened, because there are narcissists who threaten you, who threaten that if you leave, I'll do something. If you leave, I will share your secrets. If you leave, you're not going to find anybody better than me.
Well, that's stuff that I don't even know about as far as private conversations that individuals might have had, but I can see that taking place as well. Which is, it's crazy how you see.
Or I'll, even taking away financial, even work. There are narcissists who tell their partner to quit their job to take control. And they do. And guess what? When they realize they're in a narcissistic relationship, they're stuck. Because how else are they going to provide for themselves? They have to obviously get back to work.
Yeah. Yeah, see, that's.
Have you ever had any direct relationships, like friendships and that? Because I've been trying to look back at, let's say, the last 20, 25 years, if I've ever been with a narcissist.
I'm trying to, well, you'll know this better than we will. What's the difference between egotistical and narcissistical? Because I know a lot of egotistical people that have come and gone in my life. And
well, narcissist has to be beyond ego. It's not just like that person is egotistical. That person has to be egotistical. That person has to lack empathy, not take responsibility or accountability. What else is controlling? They have to have these like other traits as well. So just someone who's just egotistical isn't necessarily narcissistic, but they have to have the patterns of pathological lying and all of that. All of the traits that we were talking about.
Do you typically sit down with only one of the partners, or do you ever sit down with both partners to help them with their relationship or identifying if there's actually narcissism involved or not?
Depends. I don't think that people come in to work on one partner who is narcissistic. I think that couples come in because they want to work on it, but there are times that I notice that one partner is more narcissistic and couples therapy just doesn't work because they're not there to work on themselves. They're there to point the finger onto their partner and tell me that the partner is really the issue.
To get validation from an expert that the partner is an issue.
And then if I don't give the validation because I don't see it, they leave.
You're no longer the expert.
Exactly.
Now,
they go seeking the expert.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any relationships where both partners are narcissists?
Very rarely. Very rarely. I might have known like one or two relationships, and that still doesn't work. It really doesn't, because two narcissists is just a recipe for disaster because they're both needing to seek validation. So they probably will cheat, right? To seek validation elsewhere, because for narcissists, it's not love. Everybody is an object. What can you do for me? Whether it's business, whether it's a partnership, a relationship, a colleague, a friend, what can you do for me? That is what feeds the narcissistic supply, and everybody's a supply for them.
It's like a leech. Literally, it's a leech, but a societal leech at this point. They try to seek out as much as they can or leech off of whoever they can to fulfill whatever it is that their sick mind is seeking to fulfill.
Well, they're insecure and jealous and they're envious of others, but they don't show it because it's a mask, right? Deep down inside, they're very insecure. So I see a lot of narcissists choosing partners that are younger than them or more beautiful, more, they're successful, they're smart, educated. That's who the narcissist likes to choose.
Now you've created a curiosity in me. I'm going to ask my wife for a hall pass to date a narcissist. I'm curious.
No, you don't want to do that.
Well, here's a question we have from a viewer. Are there certain types of people that narcissists are attracted to? What's their type?
It's people who are empaths and who are more susceptible to forgiveness and are more vulnerable. So
they-
people,
they seek the weak.
I wouldn't necessarily call them weak. I would just
Well,
call them
to them.
I would call, maybe to them. Yeah, maybe to them. But it's really the one who they know they can mold.
Wow.
Now, in your practice, what is kind of the top 3 issues that you're, do you refer to them as patients or clients?
Clients.
Clients. That your clients are dealing with?
Definitely.
What would you say like 1, 2, 3? What are the top 3?
So I would say one of them is like communication issues. People in relationships just either don't communicate or they don't communicate effectively. There's a lot of anger and explosive conversations. So I really work on managing and regulating their emotions and learning to communicate effectively. The other one is dating. You know, I hear a lot of people, whether it's dating a narcissist or dating toxic people or dating in a culture where, you know, no one wants to commit. So that is one of the things that I work on with clients because I guess that's the cultural, it's not a societal thing that's happening nowadays. It's like everybody's online and there's so many potentials, I guess, and there's so many options that it's like hard for certain people to commit. So that's one of the things that I'm noticing in my practice, at least. And then the other one is, you know, working with survivors of narcissistic relationships.
So you don't work with people who are dealing with anxiety that much?
I do. I think most of my clients have anxiety. Survivors who are in narcissistic relationships or coming out of one is anxious. I think that children is also very, they deal with anxiety. I think a lot of people deal with anxiety. So that's a common, I would say, thing that I work with clients.
Because to me, it seems like anxiety is so common. It's almost like, I don't want to just throw a number out there, but to me, it seems like 8 out of 10 people seem to be dealing with some type of anxiety.
Yeah.
And is it because we've started labeling everything as anxiety, or is it just society has changed and the family structures kind of changed? Is it social? What's causing all this? Because I don't remember growing up as a kid ever hearing the term anxiety. It's like, did people just deal with it and nobody knew about it, or what's changed?
I think that, again, childhood plays a big role in the symptoms that we develop as kids, right? So anxiety stems since you were young. Or it happens if there's an incident, right? If like you got into a car crash, there's PTSD, and with that PTSD comes with anxiety about like going into the car again or driving again. So it really is incident based, but also if there's like long-term anxiety, it stems from childhood. So it's like maybe you got scared, or like maybe you had a parent who's like yelling and screaming. That causes anxiety later in the future because you don't know what to expect. You think that something's going to happen because in your family, it was dysfunctional and you don't know what to expect if mom and dad were going to fight one day or they weren't going to fight the next day.
It's like a flight or fight mechanism in their brain at this point.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah. Some people, they freeze up. It's fight, flight, or freeze. They might freeze up and tense up. Some run away, and some actually get in the way and they try to like amend things or like fight or break up the argument, depending, right? If it's their parents.
So go ahead.
How do you suggest, because kids could develop anxiety, not necessarily because of obviously parents yelling or arguments at home. They can develop anxiety just because they feel intimidated at it in a new environment, whether it's a new school, new classroom, new teacher, new whatever, right? So how do you teach parents to cope or teach their kids to overcome those anxieties so that it doesn't develop into bigger issues down the line? Let's say if it's not something that you as a parent are causing, it's just the environment they're in, or they're just overthinking their kids, obviously, right? So how do you suggest parents overcome these types of issues with their kids?
I usually suggest to talk to their kids not in an anxious way. Like, don't worry, everything is going to be fine. Or like for them to like have this like emotional, charge. There's parents who are like, no, it'll be fine. Don't worry. Like, go, like, you'll have a great time. Just go have a good time, whatever it is. Instead, regulate your emotions and don't be so overly dramatic about the situation. So talk to your kids. If you're feeling a certain way, that's okay. That's normal. It's a new environment. Like you said, you want to process, right? Processing with the kids beforehand and letting them know, like, you're safe, you're okay. If something happens, I'm here. Or, talk to teachers. So instead of just kind of going like this extreme sense of like fight or flight, like we talk about, because, growing up, that's kind of like, I don't know, like my grandma was like that, and she was like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, I don't think so, Grandma.
I was like, oh my God, okay, like I guess I'll be fine. It's just like, you want to make sure like your emotions are regulated so they don't think that there's something wrong or they're scared of a new environment.
Bro,
Yeah.
that's what I'm dealing with now, man. Like Eileen being in first grade, her and I have we're like friends, but obviously she understands that, look, I'm dad, but I could still open up to you about certain things. There's shit that she tells me that happens at school where I'm like, bro, I was in first grade. Stuff like this didn't happen when I was in first grade. And the conversations that are taking place, the topics some of the kids are talking about, when you're just like, holy shit,
Yeah.
How am I going to be processing this? How is she processing this? Am I going to be a good enough parent to make sure I'm guiding her in the right direction? Because apparently, there are terrible parents out there who are not monitoring what their children are watching, what their children are doing, and where they're opening their mouths up about certain things. And, when that conversation and those topics aren't discussed in your home and your child hears it at school and then brings it back home and says, so-and-so said this.
Can you give an example or no?
Ooh.
Because now I'm curious. My Noah's in first grade, so I'm curious what.
So she was literally the other day, she was like, two of the boys were going up to a couple of the girls and they were saying, we want to do kissy on the cheeks and kissy on the lips. And I'm like, did they ask you? And she goes, no, not me. They were asking it to other girls. I'm like, dude, these are first graders, man. I mean, you're talking about 7-year-old kids.
Well, they're mirroring something that they're hearing or seeing.
And I'm just like, oh my God, man. I'm like, what do you do? How do you have this conversation with a 7-year-old about this? And again, I can't get mad at her because she doesn't know any better. For me, it's like kind of like, so did they ask you? No, they didn't ask me. So who did they ask? Oh, they were doing it to other people. I'm like, so I asked her, I said, so what if they come up to you and they ask you, what are you going to say? She goes, that's not appropriate.
That's good.
I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
So
That's really good. Sorry to interrupt, but that's really good versus like, you can't kiss them. Don't kiss them. They have goodies. Like, I think how you.
No, that's what happened with my wife. When I went home, I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm panicking to her because I'm like, dude, I'm gonna pull out of school. What the hell's going on?
Well, you approached it really well with her.
With her.
Yeah, you didn't project your own emotions onto her.
I vented that to the wife. So I told Elle, I was like, dude, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to pull out of school. I'm just going to be homeschooled.
So how would you suggest, if she asks, okay, Papa, why did they do that? How is he supposed to respond to that? Like, what, like you said, what he did as far as you just let them know it's inappropriate. That's how she would respond if it came to her. But if she continues and saying, but why are those boys asking those other girls to do that? Or why aren't they asking me? Am I not beautiful enough? Do they not think I'm pretty enough? Or how do you respond as a parent to a 6-7-year-old in first grade with that type of,
But wait, before you answer that, Hector put something up. He said, your children are being groomed at school. Hector, if my child was getting groomed at school, she wouldn't be responding the way she responded. So that's one thing. My child cannot be groomed at school because my child is being disciplined a certain way at home, and her actions spoke louder than her words with the way she responded back to me saying that it's inappropriate. So I think there I could kind of tip my hat and say, I think I did okay as a father, knowing that how she responded to that situation. And mind you, she wasn't even approached for it. I asked her, what if they ask you, what will you respond? And she said whatever she needed to say. So just kind of wanted to chime in there. Sorry, I couldn't leave that one alone. Go ahead.
You know, that's a really good question, because I probably would ask you guys as parents, because it's a really difficult thing. I think how you approached it and how you responded is exactly what I would tell parents if I had to guide them. I don't usually do parenting. I don't do that. I really work with the kids. I don't feel, it's not because I'm a parent that I don't know, but I don't feel competent enough to provide,
sense, yeah.
you know, to provide that kind of resource, because I haven't really done my own research. So I really work with the kids, and I refer out if they need parenting, you know, coaching, parenting therapy or whatnot.
Refer
I would
them
refer.
to the WiseNuts.
Yeah.
Definitely. See, I think with situations like, you know, whether it's bullying or any of that stuff that goes on in a classroom or at school during recess, whenever it is, I think the best way to approach it is communicating with the other child's parent. And by communicating with them, I don't think it's only confronting them, but the way to approach them is very important. I think the way to approach it is by asking them, look, such and such thing is happening, and I need your help.
Yeah, but then you're at school and the school principal doesn't recognize bullying. What do you do then?
You confront the bully's parent and you have that conversation with them.
What if the parent doesn't take responsibility?
It's the way you approach it. It's the way you approach it where you, let's say, for example, your child or Arman's child is bullying one of my kids. I'm not going to call Armand and say, or Natalie and say, hey, tell your kid to back off. What the hell's your kid doing? What the hell's wrong with your kid? That's not how you approach it. What you do is you call the parent and you say, listen, such and such situation is taking place, and I need your help. I need your guidance in resolving the issue. This is what is taking place with our children, and I want to make sure we have a healthy environment, not only for my kid, but for your kid as well. Is there something we can do together to make sure our kids are friends? I think that's a more political way to approach things rather than pointing a finger, because when you point a finger at somebody, you don't know who's behind the phone or that personality. That's just another parent. So the last thing you want to do is start playing the blaming game. I think it has to be a collaboration, a team kind of effort to make sure wherever your kids are being educated is a healthy environment.
Yeah, I agree, because first thing a parent's going to do in that situation is get defensive.
Exactly.
If you point fingers, it's like, no, my child would never do that. Well, you don't know that.
Yeah.
So it's better to say, look, here's what I've heard. Let's kind of identify where it's coming from and see how we can help one another overcome this, because it's for the best of our kids. It's not, has nothing to do with you and I.
We have a question. Says, what if, let me put it up on the screen. What if the other parent is a narcissist and says, no, my child is not like that?
Can you clarify that question? What if the other parent is a narcissist?
And says, no, my child is not
in
like
in Arno's example.
Oh,
Well, then for example, if I call the dad and the dad says, no, my child would never do that. At that point, I may ask my wife, maybe it's best. The dad sounds kind of a little over the top.
douchebag.
He doesn't know who he's talking to.
Actually, narcissists are very diplomatic. They won't say, they're very diplomatic. They won't say like, oh, it's your child, not mine. They would actually sit you down and charm you and really kind of recognize, like really take on both of like parents' vulnerabilities.
Really?
Yeah. They're so like,
Man, now I'm so curious.
it is so bad. Yeah.
Aren't you curious?
That's the thing. And I think that as a narcissistic parent, they won't get defensive.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I would think that they would actually, no, man. I would actually think that they would get super defensive and protect their child as far as like their cub or their offspring.
No, they become very diplomatic. They'll sit down, they'll listen to you, they'll pick up on your vulnerabilities so that somehow they can use it later.
Oh, then they'll go to little Johnny and say, "Hey, little Johnny, keep doing what you're doing."
And you'll go and beat up your child. I told you not to do that. Dad, it wasn't my fault. You agreed with me 2 hours ago. Yeah, but after I met his dad, it's your fault.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Behind closed doors, behind closed doors, they'll actually devalue and hurt their kids, not the other kid or parent.
Man, the more you speak, Natalie, the more I'm curious about really getting into a relationship at some level with the narcissist, because it sounds so fascinating. I swear.
It's awful. It's not fascinating.
I'm not in any way trying to undermine anybody's relationship that they've been in and where they felt, abused and all. I'm not mocking anybody. It's just creating this fascination where I keep on thinking, have I ever dealt with one? I'm going back to all my employees and my friends and other relationships I've had, and I'm trying to think, did I ever deal with one? Or was I maybe oblivious to it? I don't know.
You must have. You must have throughout your
I
time.
look pretty stupid. I was oblivious.
No, not at all. I mean, that means I was stupid if I dealt with a narcissistic relationship as a therapist. Okay, so
meaning
not
I
at all.
dealt with it and I didn't realize it. That's what I mean by stupid.
I think a lot of people have dealt with it and didn't realize it until later.
You have no idea. I'm going to be going back into like this whole year.
I'm
I'm opening up my yearbook tonight.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
gonna be
I'm
FaceTiming you like
I'm
this.
sure it's like I said. I'm sure it's in front, not me, in front of you or next to you, and you wouldn't even expect it.
Well, let's say for example, you do recognize that you're in a narcissistic relationship. How do you get out of a relationship like that without triggering that individual or triggering them to literally explode?
You're either the one exploding, or the other partner is just like leaving you.
The narcissist is leaving you?
Yeah.
I mean, from my understanding, a narcissistic individual, as we discussed, is like a leech. They clasp onto whoever it is
When they want to.
Ooh.
When they want to discard you, they will. So, there's the cycle of abuse when it comes to narcissists. In the beginning, they're charming and charismatic. They love bomb you, whether it's small gifts, big gifts, right? To suck you in, to hoover you. That's the name, the term that we use. They hoover you in, and then once they suck you into the relationship and recognize that like they got you and you're hooked, then they start slowly but surely, subtly devaluing you. They might comment on, I don't know, your career and say something. It's less than theirs. Or they might devalue you in different ways. Like, for example, I know someone, a narcissistic person would look at, in this case, other women, like right in front of you. They would just look at other women. And you're thinking like, wait a minute, am I not good? Like, is this happening? Like, is this person just continuously looking at other women? Like, and I recognize some narcissists who are covert, they like to see if other people are looking at them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. It's pretty extreme. I mean, that's someone I dealt with, but that's an example of a narcissist.
So they want to get validation from Joe Schmo. Sorry, Joe, but just saying.
I'm used to it, man.
Okay. By Joe Schmo, who's sitting across the room, who they have no idea who that individual is.
Yeah.
But they'll do a certain act or they'll act a certain way in order to get validation from a complete stranger.
Stranger, and you're sitting next to them. And you're thinking,
geez.
and you're like, wait a minute, am I doing something wrong? I feel like I look good. Like, I dress nice. Like, am I too, like, do I need validation? Am I the narcissist? Maybe so that's why I feel like a lot of survivors just question so much. Am I the problem? Am I at fault? And they're not the narcissist if they're questioning themselves, because narcissists don't question themselves.
They know it all.
How you refer to them as survivors, though.
Thank you for acknowledging that, actually. I know people call it victims, right? Victims of sexual abuse, victims of mental abuse, victims of this abuse. And even in my book, I call them survivors, because even when you're in the narcissistic relationship, to me, I still think you're surviving. You're trying to like float above water, and you're trying to survive as much as you can until you get out.
You're treading at this point, literally in water, until you can pull yourself out.
Either you do it with no contact, or the narcissist walks away.
Joe, maybe we should do a poll and see how many of our audience has or recognizes that they've been in a narcissistic relationship.
Oh, it's going to be high.
'Cause I'm curious.
Unfortunately, it's going to be high.
I actually have, well, YouTube, we would have to do a poll, but I have there's a good question from M. It says, why would a narcissist devalue and disregard? What's the trigger?
So it's a way to take power and control over you. So the reason why there's the cycle of abuse happens is that after the discard phase, it doesn't stop there. They might discard you and not talk to you for days, but guess what? Couple days later or a week later, you'll get a text. You'll get this love bombing text with a picture, let's say, of you guys like having a good time. And that reels the person back in. And they do this to take control over you, because it takes a pattern to control someone. It's not just, I devalued you and there you go. Like, that's how I control you. No. The cycle makes someone get stuck in the narcissistic relationship, because they're waiting for another dopamine hit. They're waiting for that love bombing to hit again. And so you're chemically attached to this cycle. And that's what they do. It's a way to like take power and control over you.
So then this goes back to the question, how do you leave that relationship and not create this extravagant explosion in your relationship that you're in, basically, which I wouldn't even consider a relationship. I don't even know what the wording would be, because
Toxic.
Yeah, I mean, how do you leave that?
There are stages, I would say. And that's what I write in my book, is because I went through the stages, and I noticed as I worked with clients, they were going through the stages. So the first stage, I would say, is it's understanding you're in a narcissistic relationship. That's the first stage. Is acceptance, being aware of it and accepting it. The second stage is grief and loss. Once you've accepted it, there's this grieving stage where you recognize that you're in this fantasy relationship. You're in a relationship that you hoped it would be different than what it is, what the true reality of the relationship is. So you're kind of grieving the loss of what the relationship could have been versus what it actually is. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Now, when you exited your relationship and you met your fiance now, did you have like backflashes or kind of anxiety going into this new relationship and constantly trying to identify whether he's a narcissist or not? Or was it just a normal transition for you?
PTSD?
There was PTSD. Before I met him, I did a lot of work on myself. I was also seeing a therapist. I think I've been seeing my therapist for a very long time.
We chuckled about it in the elevator. She was like, my therapist is on the street. I'm like, a therapist is seeing the therapist? Very Sopranos. Very Sopranos.
I mean, honestly, I really couldn't have done it without her. My healing, being a better therapist, I feel like by seeing her, I feel that I have been a better therapist as well, and very, very much more competent. So I definitely give a lot of credit to her in my healing process. So before I met my fiance, I did a lot of work. I worked on myself. I worked on my book. It was definitely an externalizing feeling for me. There was a reward to knowing that I can really help other people who feel the way that I did, or even worse, when they're getting a divorce or they have kids. So I really, there's this rewarding factor of like helping others as well during this process. And so when I met my fiance, there was anxiety though. There was anxiety. And the anxiety was waiting for the other shoe to drop. When is it's going to end? He's going to leave or I'm going to leave. Something is going to happen and it's not going to work out.
So you were constantly on pins and needles.
The first, I would say, couple of months. And
What helped you overcome that, as other than therapy?
I knew he was an empath or he was like really kind when...
Empaths are meaning somebody who's empathetic?
Empathetic, yeah. Fully empathetic. That's what I call empaths. He would hug me when I would feel anxious. He would just hug me. He wouldn't say anything mean to me. Like, why are you acting crazy? What's wrong with you? Nothing. He would just hug me. And my nervous system just went like this, like calm. And I was like, oh, this feels really safe. This feels really safe and secure. And that's when I knew.
Did he get out of a possibly bad relationship as well, where he was kind of looking for somebody to, I don't know, maybe empty his heart out to as well?
Yes.
See, that has a lot to do with it, in my opinion.
That's a good question though, yeah.
Because you have two broken hearts looking to kind of mend themselves. And, luckily you guys found each other to the point where you're helping him. And at the same time, he's able to help you in different forms, obviously. I don't know what he went through, but, you coming out of a traumatic relationship where, we've said it multiple times, being a survivor, having PTSD, being anxious, being nervous. Again, I don't even know if you've had panic attacks, but, him being there to console and to comfort you, I think that was kind of the cherry on top as far as, all right, no, this guy's legit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you did mention you felt safe and secure. I think that's a key thing that every woman wants to feel in a man.
I really agree with that.
And the fact that society now is like, well, no, we're equal. All right, sure. A woman is not going to make me feel safe and secure. I have to make her feel safe and secure. She can make me feel safe and secure maybe in other ways, as far as, can she?
I don't know.
I guess in a traditional way, if you're like coming from a traditional couples.
Safe and secure as in like, okay, she's a great wife, great mom, and all that stuff. But anything beyond that as a man, I don't need safe and secure.
Well, I have a question for you. Let's say hypothetically, this is totally out of context. I'm just using you as an example. Like if your wife cheats on you, are you going to feel safe?
Am I going to feel safe?
Or are you going to feel secure? Or both? Are you going to feel secure if she cheats on you, let's say?
If she cheats on me, I don't think it would. I would have either of those feelings, unsafe or insecure, because her cheating has nothing to do with me, in my opinion. It has to do with possibly her own insecurities. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. That may sound narcissistic, but that's how I look. Because to me, I like to break things down and understand. I don't look at anything just from the surface and try to diagnose it or understand it from the surface. So, okay, what led to that? Was it something that I did, or was it just? I mean, I can't even obviously process that thought because it's never crossed my mind. But just off the top of my head, to me, it has nothing to do with me feeling unsafe or insecure, because I don't think anybody can make me feel insecure, unsafe, except myself. That's how I approach.
Statistically speaking, men are more likely to cheat than women. But when a woman does cheat, and again, we're not advocating cheating, ladies and gentlemen, but when and if a woman does cheat, it's done more on an emotional standpoint rather than a physical. A man cheats for physical release. If they're not getting it at home, or they're out with the boys and something happens and, they can have a one night stand and call it a day. Whereas, in my opinion, and statistically speaking, females have to emotionally really be devoted to the action.
Well, see, I'll tell you which part I disagree with, because even men having multiple, let's say even if you're not married, right? If a man has multiple partners at the same time, we don't realize it, but it affects us emotionally, because every time you're intimate, you're releasing certain chemicals, and your brain is not able to differentiate between A, B, C girl. So it's confusing you whether you realize it or not, as far as how you're supposed to feel. Yeah, of course, physically you may feel good and dominant about yourself. You feel like, I'm an alpha male.
Yeah, it's an act at that point.
But at the end of the day, subconsciously, it's affecting your mind as far, even it could affect your confidence as far as, am I being used as a tool for these multiple women, or am I really, it's not validating anything masculine within you, I don't think.
I think that's a rare case, though. I think there's a lot of guys out there who seek multiple women because they enjoy women. That's what they enjoy.
For narcissists, it's like a boost of ego every time.
It's a dopamine trip.
Yeah, it is. And it's never ending. Not one person can satisfy that.
In fact, I would actually go above and beyond and say they actually enjoy, a narcissist that is, enjoy other women more than they enjoy their significant other. There's men that look at their women as, again, I'm do not take this out of context, ladies and gentlemen, as a birthing person, a woman to basically bear children with. They don't look at having sex with their wife as pleasure. They look at it as, you're here to raise the kids, I'm here to have sex with you, for you to bear a child for me.
On an as-needed basis.
Yeah, and that's it. And they'll go out and they'll fulfill certain fantasies with other women. And unfortunately, there are women who are okay with that.
But I promise you, if you break it down with that man, there's nothing masculine about him in his head. It's all about, he himself is confused about his own identity. That's why he does that. It has nothing to do with, like, nowhere in the world, in no culture, are you going to sit down with anybody rational that's going to say, yeah, that makes you more of a man.
Well, anything that's not normal is completely, that there's something wrong with that individual. Because you having multiple mistresses is not normal. So obviously there's something internally wrong with that person.
But see, that's the thing. Men don't realize that. Women may cheat just to get back at their husbands, or because they just want to break them, because they can't break them physically, so they're going to screw them up emotionally. And women do cheat, if not equal, more. It's just they don't get caught as much as men do. Men are morons. They'll get caught within 5 minutes. Women will come home and nobody will know what happened. But men, they'll come home with the lipstick stain on their neck and
smelling like
Victoria's Secret,
I don't know. I think that it depends on the person. Like, I feel like, obviously I work with like people who deal with narcissists, so I'm using extremes. But there are narcissists who like lie about them sleeping with other women, and I always tell my clients, like, go to the doctor and make sure like you get checked, because it's really bad. I really do think that, like, you can destroy a person's body, like women's body. And it's like, I do think women also get caught too. Like I've heard a lot of, stories, and
of course they do,
they got caught. Even men can be depends. It really depends who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a narcissist versus, someone who's not, but still they might not care. In a way, they want to get caught.
By check, you mean going to the doctor and making sure they're not bringing anything home, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
That's where she was going with that, ladies and gentlemen. Not bringing something home with them.
Thank you for clarifying.
Is that checking as accurate as the COVID test, or it's a little bit...
I mean, you have to go get a physical, I would say.
Because you could take the COVID test and then 5 minutes later...
Is it an expired test?
That's what happened. Right away, you get no.
And you can get COVID right afterwards. So I don't know if that checked the same way. You can go get checked, and then on your way, you're like, oh shit, I got to go back and check again.
Is it nasal? Is it
No, it's anal.
anal?
Oh, God.
No. All right.
Guys, quick thing.
ahead.
We have the poll that you requested, Armand, on YouTube.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Joe.
So we're should be ending in the next 5 minutes. So if you haven't done a yes
All
or
right.
no,
Yeah. Guys, the poll is out. It's going to be ending, like Joe said, in the next literally 5 minutes. So have you been in a relationship with a narcissist? So far, right now, we're at 60% yes, 40% no.
Wow, it's kind of close. I thought it was going to be higher.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Maybe some of us have been in one and we just never realized it.
Or some of
Yeah.
you are the narcissist and you don't
Yeah, exactly. It's the ones that like said
you
no.
psychopaths.
You guys need to set an appointment with Natalie and check yourself, see if it's you. Maybe
Yes.
Assess.
assess yourself. But going back to, let's say if people, because look, not everybody has access to therapists, right? Or they can't afford it. And I don't know if there's insurances that cover sessions or whatnot. But what are some tools you can share with people that can deal with anxiety, as far as whether it's PTSD from a toxic relationship, if they're, as you say, survivor, or again, like I said, I feel like everybody's, especially with today's social climate and, you know, kind of the economic climate and everything, a lot of people are dealing with anxiety at one level or another, or multiple levels. That could be because they can't, you know, they can't afford to take their kids to the extracurricular activities they want, or they can't, you know, they're in a relationship they don't want to be in, or their kids are dealing with that. I mean, everybody's dealing with it. Most people, I should say, are dealing with some type of anxiety. So what are some tools that you can share where people can kind of try to practice at home and maybe look at things from a different perspective to help them cope with such issues in life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I use different coping mechanisms, but you know, anxiety is the fear of the unknown, right? It's not knowing what's going to happen next. And I think that a lot of people live in the future or in the past, and they don't live in the moment. And that becomes a problem because it creates anxiety. Because do we have control over the future?
No.
No. We only have control over the now. And so much of our brains has been, you know, created to think about what's next, right? What do you do after you graduate? What do you do after that? After you get married? What do you do after you have kids? Like, what's next? We're kind of like conditioned to prepare for the future when we don't really have control. We can have goals, that's fine, but we don't really have control over the future. So that's what anxiety is the fear of the unknown. So one of the things that I tell my clients is to bring yourself back to the present moment. What are you doing right now? And one of the techniques that I use is called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. So it's 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you smell, 2 things you taste, and 1 thing you touch. And what that does is wherever you are, you're coming back to the present moment, because the brain is so wired to be in the what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by 5 things you see, 4 things you...
Yeah, I'm kind of...
Do you want to practice that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll tell you. So in order for you, like if you're thinking about too much into the future, you're kind of constantly worried about what's to come. And I would say, okay, describe 5 things you see in this room.
You want to be the patient?
Client.
Client? Sorry.
I see camera, lights, a cabinet, some cigars, and Sexy Joe,
And 4 things you hear?
my sexy voice.
Narcissist. Sorry.
4 things I hear. I hear a buzzing sound.
Good. What else?
I don't know if I can name 4 things I hear.
Okay.
Okay. So 3 things you smell. It could be anything that comes to you.
I guess leather cigar smell, because we're in the cigar lounge at the Glen Northern Club in Glendale.
Anything that comes to you.
I showered today.
Did the other Arnold shower?
Okay, and then let's say 2 things you taste.
See, this is more challenging than I expected. I mean,
Yeah.
when you say 2 things I taste,
It could be anything. It could be the toothpaste in the morning. It could be like, what do you like? Because we have the senses are really strong. So like you don't have to have a flower to smell it. It can come to you because you know the smell of it.
I just tasted the chicken I had for lunch. Now that
Okay.
you mentioned it.
Okay.
And I guess the beer. Oh, no, the cigar. The cigar.
Lingering.
Is
And
the
one thing you
flavor is
touch.
one thing I touch.
What are you touching right now?
This is the latest symbols.
Illuminati.
Symbols. That I'm
Okay.
just touching my hands. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you worry a lot?
Not at all.
Are you an anxious person? Do you think about
Not
the
at all.
future? Oh, okay. It sounded like it was difficult for you to kind of be in the present moment, or maybe it was difficult for you to describe like what comes to you in the moment.
It's hard to describe because I'm in the moment as far as this episode that we're doing with you. So I'm in the moment. I'm not a warrior at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things like I help clients is usually like, whatever they hear, it could be like ambulance outside. It could be like their voice. It could be, so I bring them back to the present moment because they are very much like anxious about the future. So they describe those things and I say, did you think about anything else besides the things you described? And they say no, because that's what they were describing, whatever they see and hear in the moment.
So are there people that'll bring something up that's not in the moment? Is that what it is?
No, not all the time. It's the thing is like their minds are always constantly worried, right? Like, what am I going to do? What's going to happen next, right? So when they describe the things that like your 5 senses are a very strong grounding technique. So when you do that, you're in the present moment. You're not thinking about the what ifs. You're not thinking about anything else besides describing what you see and what it is that you're seeing live in the moment.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing you. I'm seeing a leather chair. It's in the moment. Versus, oh gosh, what am I going to like make afterwards? What am I going to do tomorrow? Tomorrow's a long day, so.
But how would, let's say if I was an anxious person, I'm thinking about tomorrow, oh my God, I have to, do this and that, or my credit card payment is, how would that correlate and transfer into what I'm hearing or seeing or smelling or touching or what was the other one, listening to?
Yeah.
How would that correlate? Like, for instance, how would an anxious person respond to those questions?
They do pretty well with it, actually. When they describe the things that they see and they hear and they smell, they describe it pretty well because I'm guiding them. And so when I ask them at the end, did you think about anything else besides the things you said? They say no, and they're like, wow. So there's this like wow moment because so much of their life is just conditioned to think about the what ifs. What if this is going to happen? What if that's going to happen? It doesn't correlate. It's more of like a grounding technique to bring the brain and the thoughts back to what is real, what you have control over right now.
So what did my response? How would you interpret my response to you?
Some people do have more of a hard time, like, using their senses because they're thinking too much of the what ifs or thinking about some other thought. So that's why I thought maybe you might be more thinking about the future. You're thinking about something else besides, your 5 senses. That is the reason why I thought maybe
I had
you
more
felt
anxiety
anxious.
for you, man. I'm like, say cigar, bro. You just got a
Yes.
cigar. Let's talk about the beer. You had a beer.
Maybe I was overthinking. I don't
As
know.
far as noises, I was like, what? Like, again, maybe this is me overthinking it, but you could literally hear, because it's so quiet in here and we have noise canceling headphones. Yeah, you hear tapping or whatever it is, or maybe you hear the sirens outside. But I was like, dude, I could literally hear the saliva in my mouth because it's so quiet and you have these noise canceling headphones and you have a mic in front of you. Yeah, maybe this is me being over analytical, but
And now you're a Monday by quarterback.
Well, maybe you wanted to like, make it perfect, or maybe there's this analytical side of you too, to like
There's
Really
a very
him or me?
him,
Oh, I thought I was being analytical.
right?
I'm very.
That's why I
analytical,
thought
yes.
maybe you were overthinking it. So it was like more, you were thinking about what should I say and what.
No, I was trying to really like, okay, what am I seeing here that I can name, let's say, 50 items here, but I was also trying to figure out the relevance to, I guess, to help people, our audience, also understand the process we're going through. Because I'm looking around like, okay, there's a bunch of items here, but do I just randomly name something or?
So you were thinking about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Okay. So you were thinking about something else besides just the naming whatever I
Whatever
asked.
came to mind
Yeah.
first. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was an interruption of thought there that maybe swayed you from just being in the present moment because you're thinking about like, what can I say that would benefit the audience, right?
Yeah, to give them the experience of as if they're having the conversation with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wasn't worried about them.
You already did.
I'm right, man.
Guys,
Now I have an official diagnosis, guys.
sorry, I'm closing the poll right about now.
Close it.
All right. And
Close it. We're at.
I'll
Tell us,
you
Joe.
right now. It's showing up.
Drum
Okay,
roll.
here we go. We're at 50%, 57% yes, and 42% no. This is
Where's the 1%?
there's only 21 votes, and YouTube probably isn't good at math.
21 votes.
See.
Oh, it's not.
Come on, people. Jeez.
I
We should
was-
do a poll on Instagram,
On
just to see,
Instagram, yeah. That would be.
and
that
then we'll
would be
tag
good.
you in it.
Yeah,
see
yeah.
see what the results come out
Yeah.
to be.
That would be good.
Yeah. Is there anything that we've missed today?
Oh, I can talk about narcissism all day. So, like, if you want to stick around, I'll talk about it.
that
I'm
might
good.
be that might be a good excuse to bring you back
Part
later. in
two.
the
I would love that.
Yeah.
Can we diagnose this guy live on the show?
I'm down for
I
that.
think you both are wonderful.
Oh,
Oh, you have to say that. You're our guest on our show.
No,
of
I don't
course.
have to.
No?
No, I'm not going to like.
she's not gonna sugarcoat it.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it if I don't mean it.
No, we appreciate. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your Monday to be with us.
Thank you.
We really do. And I don't know what people have said about us online. As far as did you get any DMs saying, "Oh my God, you're going on the WiseNuts"? Do you know who these guys are? Did you get anything like that at all?
No, I just, I've gotten comments about like, oh, I listen to them, I watch them.
Okay.
They might say questions that might be uncomfortable, but that's okay. You can, just share whatever comes to mind. Because, you guys talk about deep, truthful things, and that's okay. Some people are not comfortable to talk about certain things,
Yeah.
And that's why I like your show.
We appreciate that. What do you think of everybody calling Trump a narcissist?
Oh, you're really bringing that up? Wow.
You kind of held my hand and walked me
What?
through that gate of...
Are you getting back at me or something? Oh my God. Well, I do think he has like narcissistic traits. Do you? I mean,
I think every single politician, businessman does.
yeah.
I think in order for
I'm
you
not-
to be a politician, I think in order for you to be a president, and this can go back to not only Trump, but Biden, Obama, Clinton, Reagan, Bush, all of them. You have to, Putin,
And on
Zelensky.
top of that, a billionaire?
on top of, in order for you to be a president, a leader of a foreign country or a country, you have to have some sort of narcissistic traits. But at the same time, is he empathetic? I think so, because there's so many stories of him. The best one that I loved was his limo breaking down in New York, and a guy pulls over and helps him change the tire or whatever it was. The next day, he got the deed to his house. So is he narcissistic? Yeah, there's narcissistic traits. Does he check all the boxes? I don't think so. because there's a lot of empathy that's involved there as well. The man has been a generous individual to families, to his city, to his country. Again, I don't want to get into politics, but
So there's some traits, huh? Do you think either one of us have some narcissistic traits?
Well, now that I think about it, no, I'm just kidding.
No, please be honest. I mean,
uppercut.
we're big boys. We can handle it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you on like every single politician has it. I don't think every single one of them. I do think there are some that don't, and I do think that like it takes a certain level of, I would say, I don't know, political like thing for you to be president. I don't even know. You need a lot of different like qualities to be a president, but I can't imagine every single politician, every single president that we had was narcissistic. I don't really agree with that.
Again, I didn't go. I went down just kind of my timeline as to who I remember, and that's what I remember. I mean, if you were to ask me again, I don't want to dive too deep into this.
Right.
If you ask me, I think the most narcissistic leader that is out there today is Zelensky. Failed actor, is literally a leech, has taken tax money, and look what he's done to his country, all for the benefit of who?
I would call him a brilliant fundraiser.
And to be honest, not every narcissist is like there are narcissists who are extremely smart and intelligent.
Yeah.
You know,
you have to be smart in order to manipulate other people.
right?
So
Exactly. So they're not like, you know, they're incredibly knowledgeable.
but they're not good people.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah,
You can be
exactly.
a knowledgeable person and be a phenomenal person and human being to society.
Yeah.
And you could be a knowledgeable person and be a complete piece of shit to society and to the individual, to the people around you. It just depends on which path you want to walk
True.
and who you want to drag with you. But yeah,
We have one
that's
question.
the fact that we're going to have her back. There's a possibility that she might say, you know what?
No, I think she'd love to be
No,
back.
I would love
I'm
to.
teasing.
No, I would love to come back. Please.
No,
Anytime.
definitely we're going to we would love to have you back because we love sitting down with, you know, people of different professions and
People smarter than us.
definitely and kind of brainstorming and just venting to each other because I think conversation, and Arman could agree with this as well, is probably one of the best tools in sharpening your mind, sharpening your social skills and everything around you.
And by the way, guys, I think you guys know us well enough by now, but just to reiterate, and in case there are some new followers of Natalie who think these guys love to just blow their own horn. The reason why we share our own personal stories is because it's relatable. It's not to talk about how we're such wonderful fathers and husbands. No, it's not about that. It's just real life examples, scenarios that he shared about his daughter and I've shared with my, even though the hypothetical situation was not right. But that's the reason why we share it, because to us, truly, this show is about, the community coming together, our viewers coming together, this, like he said, discussing ideas. That's why we bring the guests to share their inputs and their perspective and their industry, their knowledge with us and with our audience. And we give our perspective. We agree on certain things, disagree on others. But at the end of the day, sharing the stories is how it makes all of us relatable. And I'm sure some of you guys are dealing with similar situations, and you may take that as, maybe that's how I should handle that as well, or I probably don't want to do what these guys did. That's why we do that at the end of the day.
Yep.
That's why they call us the WiseNuts.
I like it.
Not the numbnuts.
Well, again, we want to thank you for taking time out of your Monday to be with us. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Definitely.
Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Guys, today's show again was brought to you by the law offices of Arman Grigorian. If you're involved in a car accident and you've been injured, reach out to Arman. Call his direct cell phone number, 818-404-0333. He will help you with all of your car accident needs. Also, the cabinet spot. Guys, reach out to Vic. He will help you build a beautiful kitchen, walk-in closet, garage conversion into a beautiful storage. If all your shit is basically piled on top of each other, call him. What's his number? 1-888
495-0210.
And also, we want to thank the boys at the Glen Arden. If you're interested in a membership at the Glen Arden, want to come by, smoke some cigars with us, and possibly grab a locker, reach out to us. We'll connect you to management, and they will help you become a member. Other than that, guys, today's episode will be up and running on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms mañana. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you guys all next Monday.